from KTUL Tulsa. You're watching Good Day Tulsa.
Speaking of International Whiskey Day, we are going to have fun today because our favorite celebrity historian, Raffi Andonian's here, and I believe he brought some whiskey with him. Now, being a Kentucky girl, I have to only drink it if it's bourbon. And, you know, bourbon is whiskey that's made in Kentucky. So, Right after the break, we're going to be joined by our favorite celebrity historian to get us informed and prepared for International Whiskey Day. So don't go away.
Today is International Whiskey Day, and we're going to celebrate with one of our favorite guests.
Yeah, joining us here to help us celebrate responsibly, of course, is celebrity historian Raffi Andonian, one of our favorite guests. We always learn fun stuff when he is in the house. So, International Whiskey Day. First of all, I want you to tell us a little bit about what whiskey is and how long it's been around, because I'm assuming it's been around for quite some time.
It has been around. Well, It depends how you look at it, too, is that the distillation process of distilling things has been around for well over 2,000 years with the ancient Egyptians and ancient Greeks. They're not necessarily making alcohol with it, but they're making like perfumes or drinking water out of ocean water with it, actually using distillation. But it's about 1,000 years ago that you start to see using producing alcohol of different sorts with the distilling process. And so by the time you get the first reference to specifically whiskey, which is a mash of different grains, so it's like barley, rye, and corn, a mixture of that being distilled, it's in Scotland about 500 or so years ago. And you know what it was called?
What?
In Latin? Agua vitae. That's how they refer to it, which I took Latin in college. That means water of life.
Okay.
Talking about giving you life, I guess this gives you life.
So there was whiskey before Hank Jr. records. I had no idea. No idea.
Now, that's how it makes it over to America, of course, is Scottish and Irish immigrants come over to North America, and that's how you start to have it in
I see.
the
Okay,
Americas.
so it wasn't here before that time. All right, now, I'm a Kentucky girl, as I've mentioned, you know, a time or 50 on this show. We happen to prefer bourbon. So I know the difference between bourbon and whiskey, but I know that there's always a contention here.
Yeah, so bourbon, of course, from Kentucky, right? But the makeup of bourbon, if you leave just a region, is supposed to be 51% or more corn. So remember I said it's just a mash of rye, corn, and barley. But if you have in that mash, you have majority corn, then it's going to be, that's what gives it that sweet taste of bourbon. That's that corn sweetness.
That makes it amazing.
Amazing. I see what you did there. All right, okay. All right, so now what do we have here? There's a couple of these that are made right here in Oklahoma, correct?
Yeah. Yes, all of these are made in Oklahoma, and actually the 3 of these are from Red Fork, which is from right here in Tulsa. So I thought that we would try some to celebrate whiskey in America.
Dang.
Because, you know, this is the reason we have
a lot, didn't you?
I want to make sure you have enough to sip.
Ooh, I can smell that.
I know Bud is a connoisseur of history and
yes.
whiskey, so of course, you know, so.
Yeah. See, I can smell that, and being somebody who grew up in Kentucky, that just brings back some memories. That's why I'm letting y'all imbibe this morning. Okay.
A quick story about this that's really fascinating. It ties to history. Many people might remember the term whiskey rebellion.
Yes.
Might sound familiar. Well, what that is about is when the federal government assumed the debt of the states from the Revolutionary War. Now it had to collect money, right, to pay for the debts of the Revolutionary War. Well, one of the taxes they put out was this whiskey tax. Folks in Western Pennsylvania were not happy about it. They thought it was unfair. It favored larger distributors, and it favored paying in cash, which they didn't have a lot of cash of. So they started serious rebellions. And one of the images you're seeing on your screen is the tarring and feathering of one of the officials collecting the tax.
Oh my God.
Some men actually got dressed up as women to disguise themselves and went and tarred and feathered the guy, stripped him naked and tarred and feathered him. Even at some point, different rebellions led to exchange of gunfire. Eventually, George Washington shows up in Western Pennsylvania with 12,000 troops, a militia that he activates as the commander-in-chief. Remember, he's president at the time. As a commander-in-chief, shows up in Western Pennsylvania to say, you can't be doing this sort of violence. And so in that process, with all the peace stuff that had failed and all the this has been taking place, now all of a sudden that ragtag kind of group dissipates. They don't want to mess with George Washington. And that starts to bring an end to it. But it's seen in American history very significant as the first true test of federal government's authority over the taxation and if it's a state versus the federal. And George Washington put an end to that, and whiskey was at the center of it, part of the American history.
I went to a whiskey tasting class, and they taught us the differences and where. So when you take a sip of whiskey, you need to sit it on the back part of your mouth and on your tongue, and you could begin to see the differences between multiple whiskeys and where it separates. And you can learn a whole lot in whiskey
So that
classes.
Kentucky Deluxe that I drank in college, I don't think we were letting it.
That's where you would taste that sweetness. You have a great point.
Right. She was drunk as a bicycle. That's different.
I like one factoid about that. In George Washington's era, if you held it in the back of your mouth like that, you would not taste that flavor, that oakiness, because back then the whiskey was clear and it was not aged.
Right.
So it would look like vodka. This has that oakiness taste because it's in the barrels and it's been aging. They didn't age it and it was clear. So George Washington's whiskey and the Whiskey Rebellion, that's the clear stuff. And George Washington himself distilled whiskey on his property.
You got to cut the clear stuff with apple juice, but you didn't hear that from me.
All right, well, you guys imbibe while I read this part. It's always great to have you on. You always have so much knowledge.
Thank you for coming.
And he brought booze to food. All right, for more information on Raffi Andonian, you can check out a celebrity historian. You can check out his website at celebrityhistorian.com. Cheers, guys.